My name is Carlos Miguel Prieto, and I'm music director of the National Symphony of Mexico, which is an orchestra that is almost 90 years old, in the Louisiana Philharmonic in New Orleans. And I've been a conductor for the last 15 years. I kind of tour all around the world, do 120, 130 concerts a year, kind of a crazy schedule. But I enjoy it very much. I've been a violinist and a musician ever since the age of 5 or 6, and got hooked into music through my family that has a long 4 or 5 generation of music lovers, especially string players and especially string quartet players.
There's a sharp on the third beat of 12 that somebody is not doing. Okay? 11. Oh.
The conductor is responsible for making the orchestra play a faithful rendition of what the composer had in mind. Okay, so we are really the interpreters of the mind of Beethoven, for example, or Falla, or Copland, whoever. And that's a very big responsibility. So I mean, we have in our hands tempo, but mostly character, the meaning of the music. And then technical things like building things together and making sure that chords are in tune.
Oh, and the note that doesn't sound very secure in first violins, violas, and flutes is fourth bar of 12, the G natural. Si, 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 do, si, la, fa, sol, la, fa, sol. It's easy to play G sharp. Okay, let's do 11. 11. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Especially because we are all our performers, and the audience is really why we're here. The Youth Orchestra of the Americas is a 10-year already endeavor of an orchestra of 100 and so musicians from every country, from Canada all the way south to Chile and Argentina. And it's an orchestra that has toured all of the Americas. It's comprised of musicians between the age of, let's say, 18 to 28, I think. And it was during the first 7 years, it was Gustavo Dudamel and me, or an I think that's how you say it. And then now I'm the music director of that orchestra, and that's an incredible group of musicians and human beings who actually change in partly every year because it's through auditions. An orchestra, just by playing together, whether it plays completely together or not is beyond the point. But just by playing together is already an example to a community. Because you're talking about 100 artists who may have very different feelings and ideas about a certain piece or a certain note or a certain bar. But they have to put that aside and play together and give out all they have.
With the cellos and a bit shorter. Like this. Pum, 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 pim, pum, pum, pum. Young pum. Yeah? With more gusto, yeah? Okay, let's do 5. Okay? 1, 2, 3.
When a city has a great orchestra, such as this city has a great orchestra, that is also an important magnet for people to move to a certain community. It communicates quality of life. It communicates also education for young people. This experience I've had in New Orleans is really, of course, it's a great musical experience, and I've had great musical adventures in New Orleans. But what's the most incredible is how the orchestra has been kind of a leader in the cultural resurgence of that city. You may or may not remember that people would question, especially people who did not understand what the city is about, would question whether the city should come back because of X factors which have nothing to do with reality. But of course the city would come back, and of course the orchestra would come back, and it has, better than ever. I signed my contract 1 week before Katrina, and even today people remind me, well, you could have gotten out of that contract because these are really extraordinary circumstances. But this is not how I think. I actually think that those circumstances present an opportunity for an institution such as an orchestra to show how vital a part of a city an orchestra can be. An orchestra is not part of entertainment. It's not that. An orchestra is a part of the soul of the city. If one talks about Latin American music and Latin American culture, this is something where people starting from, let's say, a little bit earlier than my generation have done a great job communicating this to the world. And thanks to people as successful as Gustavo Dudamel or some other musicians who are really on a worldwide scale taking this music, makes me extremely happy, because it shows that a Latin American can go around the world and do our music, but also the music of Beethoven successfully. And I've been invited to conduct in Spain or in Germany and the music of Strauss, not necessarily Mexican music or Colombian music, doesn't matter. But we do have, being from Latin America, a certain homework to do, to bring to different stages this music that is so fantastic, that is so interesting. It is colorful, it is fun, it is passion, it is all these things that people associate it with, but it is much deeper than that. And there are great composers in Latin America that do not write music that sounds Latin American or that sounds folkloric at all. Yet it is incredible how much music, great music, has been written in our Latin American continent over the last century or century and so. And I have the honor of being able to conduct some of these works around the world. It is important that me as a Mexican, I take a good message, because it's sad when you turn on the television and that most of the things that come from Mexico are negative. And this is something that, you know, of course is terrible for all of us who live in Mexico. But I have another message to send, and that's a positive message, and that's a message of saying there are great musicians, there's great music, and there's an incredible joy of music making in Latin America, where people, and that's what's so amazing about these young orchestras. One of them, we talked about the Youth Orchestra of the Americas, is that music is played with the absolute and complete conviction and enjoyment, passion, but also drama, you know. And I think this does define, in a way, a Latin American, a complete commitment, and that's what explains that some of these countries can have the very difficult political, economic reality, yet still have populations that enjoy life tremendously. And this is interesting because the music shows it. Huapango by Moncayo is a smiling piece. It smiles from bar one to the last bar. And it has all this incredible complication of you know, from one second to the other smiling and crying. But I've done Huapango in some areas of the United States where just the first bar makes people go into tears because of this kind of longing. The thing that I would most wish to change completely and eradicate from our societies is the problems that have to do with drug addiction, with drug trafficking, and all its related problems. You have to know that in Mexico we look at this as a problem of two countries. One that mainly uses and one that mainly produces, or is used as a bridge between producer and user. But this has caused a huge social problem in Mexico. It has caused, you know that Mexican families and the importance of family, but when suddenly in a family or in a community there is one person who is becoming incredibly rich and incredibly successful due to this, this completely destroys societies. It destroys cities. It's destroying a city that I lived in for 8 years, Monterrey. It used to be the safest city in Mexico. It's destroying Veracruz, another city that I know very well, also a very safe city. So the power, the corruptive power of drugs is incredible, and that's what I would like to see change, because that's something that did not exist to the level that we have it when I was growing up. And the power of education, of music, both as an orchestra or just music, is huge. But we don't have the ears or the real commitment of politicians. When there is one, when there's a politician that believes in this, it's so rare. It's so rare to find a governor that really believes that music is part of education and not elitist. Unfortunately, it's rare cases, but Finland is a case of complete conviction from the top to bottom that music education is important for society, and they have thousands of choruses and orchestras. Venezuela is another new example with all its problems, and this is a positive thing about Venezuela. But we need to convince our leaders, our businessmen, our politicians, that music is not this luxury for people to dress nicely and to be seen. Music is much deeper and has a more important power in young people, more important power in society. And this is something that I personally would like to impact much more.